Let's talk about Bard's 4th level spells. Starting off, we have Charm Monster. Charm Monster is just Charm Person, except we can expand the list to include all creatures instead of just humanoids. It still has disadvantage in combat, so really this is a social situation, and you really have to ask yourself, how many social situations are you getting into with creatures other than humanoids? That depends on what kind of campaign you're in. If you're on a campaign where most social situations are with humanoids, you might as well just have Charm Person, and it does this more efficiently, cheaper. However, if you're dealing with vampires, it might be fun to try and charm them instead of them getting to charm you. But I would say overall, its strength level is low, and I would categorize this as utility and on the lower end of utility. More often than not, this is a pass for me. Next up is Compulsion. So Compulsion is attempting to be a fight-winning spell, but it does have its fair share of issues. First of which is that if they are immune to charm, they're immune to this. Next is that they get a initial save, and if they pass that, it doesn't do anything. Next is that they get to take their action before you cause them to do anything. So unlike command, where they're using their action to follow your orders, they get to take their action first and then just walk in the direction that you've commanded them to. Next is after they're done with that movement, they get another save. This is a fight-winning spell, but it's not a crazy powerful fight-winning spell. I would say it's worse than Hypnotic Pattern, which is a level beneath it. However, it's not a terrible fight-winning spell. I kind of think about this spell as divide and conquer. You're gonna initially cast this AoE, it's gonna hit multiple people. Some of them are going to save. Their allies are going to start moving away while they stay there. Then some of those allies on their next turn are going to save, but some aren't. And they'll continue moving. And so now you've grouped their party into separate groups and you can focus on them one at a time. So this is a fight-winning spell, and if you're interested in trying different kinds of fight-winning spells, this is where you'd be looking, but it's unfortunately just outshone by other more powerful fight-winning spells, but I don't hate it. Confusion. Confusion is a fight-winning spell. It's going to be AoE, it's going to hit multiple people, and like Compulsion, it's going to require a save to begin with and at the end of each turn. However, its effect is more powerful than Compulsion's. There's a high percentage chance that your enemies are doing nothing or doing something stupid when they roll that d10 at the beginning of Confusion. Sometimes they may even do something detrimental, sometimes they'll get to do what they want. So I'd say this is also a fight-winning spell that probably isn't as good as Hypnotic Pattern, just tells you the strength of Hypnotic Pattern, but I do think this one is better than Compulsion. Dimension Door. Dimension Door is a crazy good teleport. The bigger your size, the better it is because you can take bigger allies, but it's a 500-foot teleport where you don't have to see, and that's a bigger deal than you'd think. One of the counters to a Misty Step is you put a bag over their head, or you put them in mist, or you put them in darkness. They can't teleport at that point. This counters that. This is a very fantastic emergency button that within 500 feet, you just need to know a general place. You can teleport there. You don't need to see it. You can take an ally along with you. This is a really good spell to put on your big bads that you don't want to die, and equally good to put on your player characters that you don't want to die as well. It acts as an emergency button, so it's essentially utility on the high end of utility. Very powerful utility. Can either be fantastic mobility just to get into places or get out of places, but it's also that just save my life emergency button. Next up is freedom of movement. I actually really like freedom of movement, but the question is, as a bard, where we can only select so many spells, doesn't make the cut. It's like on a druid, there are certain enemies this is going to be so amazing against. The grappled condition, the restrained condition, those are very common as just part of attacks of monsters. So it's really nice to have this in your back pocket as a, hey, I know I'm going up against something that is probably going to attempt to grapple me. I'm going to prepare this. Very fantastic spell for that. However, it's so niche, and as bard, we actually need to be generalists. We can't specialize too much, and this is utility that's specialized to the point where I'd say probably not a take as bard. It is a good spell though, and I do like it. Greater Invisibility. Greater Invisibility is a standout buff. It's going to give you or one of your allies the ability to have strong defenses and strong offense at the same time. It's also a fantastic emergency button. It looks like these level 4 spells are, you know, they kind of represent emergency buttons. And there's not much to say about Greater Invisibility other than it's really great. Next up is Hallucinatory Terrain. Hallucinatory Terrain falls into the utility category, and it's a really cool, interesting utility, but I do question how generally useful it is. Again, on a druid, it would be really fun to take during travel days because you can use it best in travel days. If someone's trying to follow you, you can create a chasm and it might fool them into not following you anymore. But on non-travel days, it gets kind of questionable how powerful this is. I think it's very, very cool for a creative, but if I'm just talking power level, I think there's too many other 4th level spells we need to pick up for this one to be in consideration, which is a bummer because I do like this spell. And it might even go on my list of spells that I would give to my bard for free because it's an interesting enough spell, but it's not powerful enough for me to be too worried about giving it to them for free. So maybe an item or, you know, some way of giving them this spell is something I would consider as a DM. Next up is Locate Creature. Now, I love Locate Object, and Locate Creature is the next form of Locate Object. But here's the thing. Most creatures have an object on them that you can locate, and all the effects are the same except what you target. So unless you're targeting a very specific creature with no distinct items on them, there is no benefit above the 2nd level spell, Locate Object. So for that reason, I would prefer to take Locate Object over Locate Creature even at this level. And that being said, Locate Object is one of my favorite underrated utility spells in the game. Next we have Phantasmal Killer. So the big issue with Phantasmal Killer is they have to fail 2 wisdom saving throws in a row before it does anything, and then they have a chance after each turn. So it is like a blast, a single target blast, but with 2 saves or nothing. It's just not good at its job, and it kind of continues Bard's trend of not being the greatest blasters. They're definitely better at their buffing, debuffing niche. Phantasmal Killer is a definite skip for me. Next up we have Polymorph. Polymorph is likely the best 4th level spell in the game, and you know, if it were not for Polymorph, we'd be saying to definitely take greater invisibility. Polymorph is another emergency button. If your team is losing a combat, you can change one of your injured allies into a giant ape, and all of a sudden your weak ally just became a super strong, tanky, damage dealing beast. Better to cast it on allies than on yourself because you do lose some intelligence to do that, and you don't want to be making concentration checks. You don't want to be tanking, so better on your allies than yourself. On top of that, it's utility. You can turn into giant eagles and things like that to fly your allies around, or to turn into a spider to stealth, or turn into a fish to swim through water. Or it's a debuff. If you're being charged by an army of enemies, change the most frontward enemy into a giant whale who can breathe on land, has 5-foot movement speed, so it can't really move at all, and creates a wall between you and all the enemies. The amount of utility you get in one spell here is just ridiculous. Absolutely a powerhouse, best 4th level spell in my book, bar none. Next up we have Psychic Lance. So Psychic Lance is another single target blast slash debuff. It's going to target the intelligence saving throw, which is a fantastic saving throw to target. On hit, does a decent amount of damage, 7d6, and then it basically stuns. It incapacitates them for that round. So you just took away their action with yours. If we're going to be taking a single target blast, we're definitely not taking Phantasmal Killer. We're definitely taking Psychic Lance. However, we have things like Hypnotic Pattern, which can basically stun multiple enemies for multiple turns. So again, just because of how powerful our 3rd level spells are at fight winning spells, Psychic Lance, as good as it is, really gets put on the back burner just because of how good they are. And that kind of leads into the conclusion here, where 1st level really represents our spammable support, our 2nd level represents our defense, our 3rd level represents our fight winning spells. 4th level to me really represents our emergency buttons. We don't start fights with our 4th level spell, we probably start them with our 3rd level spell. But if it turns out to be a really tough fight, getting a second wind with Polymorph, getting to escape with greater invisibility or Dimension Door, that's really what 4th level is about to me. Of course, there's some flexibility there, but I think that's what really shines in the 4th level. But that's just me. How about you? What do you think about the Bard's 4th level spells? Let me know in the comments down below. If you've been enjoying these deep dives, we have a whole deep dive playlist here. You can learn a ton about the Bard and eventually about every single class in the game. And other than that, I just hope you have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.